Chaandani is here this morning, and she's going to kick us off, and we're looking forward to hear from her. She's going to tell a lot of her bio, actually, in her story. So we're going to let her introduce herself, but welcome Chaandani Khan.
Thank you. Welcome, Changemakers. It's so nice to be here with you today. My name is Chaandani, and I harness the power of voice and language to close the gap between self and experience. As well, I do this to help build a pathway for connection between self and others. By others, I'm referring to fellow humans who don't necessarily understand our personal experience purely because they haven't experienced it themselves. But I do believe that people have the capacity to learn from the stories of others and deepen the level of empathy that they feel. And who knows, they may personally connect to experiences within our story more than we initially assume is possible. Let me take you back to a point in time in my life when I felt invincible. Feeling a sense of human connection has lit me up for as long as I can remember. It makes me feel happy, fulfilled, and like there's more to this whole rat race thing that we're doing on Earth. So, being a social extrovert who loves fellow humans, it was normal for me to meet friends and even make professional connections in my daily life. I connected through conventional means, such as at a trade show, and through less conventional means, such as at a noisy bathroom in a bar. Over the years, professionally, I interacted with a high volume of people, colleagues, vendors, teams, you name it. And somewhere along the way, I got into the habit of working 10+ hours per day, traveling often for work, and trying to balance that with my own personal travel adventures. I also maintained my social life, my workout and volunteer schedule, and I always made time to get into flow state with my photography and crafting hobbies. I felt naturally energized, and importantly, I possessed the ability to push myself hard through the times when I did actually feel tired. I like to ensure that goals were met and plans were kept. Eventually, I decided to break into a new industry that had been in the back of my mind for years. I took time to do research on the best practice for how to get into it, as well as to familiarize with its basic lingo. Additionally, I attended industry conferences and events where I could approach specific management professionals and ask to take them for an informational coffee. For some people, the strategy might sound a bit intimidating, but for my extroverted self, it was a pleasure. I felt privileged to connect with a variety of professionals who instantly offered to share their time and resources with me. It never ceases to amaze me how many people are just ready and willing to help, if only you just ask. One of my key takeaways from all these informational coffees was the value of learning the industry by actually working in it, while simultaneously pursuing education at a school program. Fast forward a couple months, and I had excitedly begun a part-time program at BCIT. A couple weeks into that, I was fortunate to land a perfect role that offered a growth trajectory with an incredible company and an even more incredible department head. The learning curve I signed up for by following this strategy was tough, but I knew my grit was tougher. Except for one thing. 3 days into my brand new career, a concussion brain injury derailed my entire existence. One day I was choosing to live my life the way that I wanted, and the next, I was forced into a deeply painful, yet profound journey that dragged me straight into the experience of social isolation. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I'd set sail on a humbling journey of loss, which would much later be followed by the opportunity for massive personal growth. I felt like my life had morphed into a choose-your-own-adventure book, but it was missing all the pages of escape options. Instead, I kept landing on horrifying pages that included things like being unable to follow a simple conversation, being unable to tell characters apart on TV shows during the rare times I tried to have screen time, that is. No longer understanding how to make a sandwich, like it just didn't click to me, didn't make sense. Waking up in physical pain for absolute years on end, and no longer being able to think clearly or behave like myself. And the bonus, none of these pages included a recovery date or an end date. Helplessly, I watched from behind a thick barrier of brain fog as the life that I worked so hard to create just drifted out of my grasp and then fell off into the abyss. Living out the chapters of no more work or income, no school, limited social life, no workouts, no volunteering, no hobbies, and above all else, very limited control over my own life. Well, it was sobering to say the least. I quickly realized that all the determination and all the grit in the world couldn't make my brain heal faster, and it just couldn't give me back my old life. My social life took a difficult hit, and with it, the feeling of consistent human connection that I had cherished. I was missing out on events, on travel opportunities, on celebrations with friends, bonding with colleagues, even working on my laptop at a chaotic coffee shop, and so much more. Although there were a few close people that I kept in touch with, I mainly couldn't keep up with my old lifestyle. I didn't yet have the language or the understanding to explain to my network or my communities that I so deeply valued what was happening to my life. It was so painful being ripped away from it all against my will. Social isolation is more than just a concept or feeling. It's an invisibility. It took 6 months for me to lose a sense of self and who I used to be. That's one of my most profound life experiences to date, yet no one around me could see it or feel it. I was alone. In the context of today's pandemic, the theme of social isolation is one that instantly, and somewhat ironically, unites us. It's a shared, lived human experience. Many Vancouverites have become well acquainted with this concept, and they tend to attribute experiencing it to an external cause. COVID-19 was and remains a devastating reality for many people. During the onset and the height of the pandemic restrictions, human connection other than in virtual form was essentially canceled. And together, we lost freedom to leave our homes, social activities, meaningful human connection, and at the core of it, we lost control in our own lives. Together, we gained way too much screen time, frustration with being stuck at home for days and weeks on end, depression, anxiety, and a slew of other mental health surprises, shall we say. During this time, though, something unexpected happened for me. I began to feel less like the outsider I had become due to the impact of my injury. I felt less different. Now I'm aware that I was witnessing people around me and on social media going through the stages of loss and grief that I had similarly gone through the year before. When I was at my worst, engaging in fun social outings, let alone being able to cognitively manage the steps required to leave my apartment, became a long-lost luxury. For an extrovert like me, it was a unique version of hell. Being what I refer to as an isolation trailblazer in this context, I would have been in a position to help others learn to cope with these life restrictions if only I had my regular wits about me. But at the time, I was drowning in symptoms and pain, and having additional restrictions placed on my life didn't affect me too much. In my case, the culprit behind my social isolation was internal. It was due to my own injured brain. However, what I faced as a result of it echoes what many have now experienced through the pandemic and through various other external causes. In order for you, our changemakers, to create the most inclusive community solution, I invite you to take both external and internal causes for isolation from others into account. Let's talk reintegration. Okay, so where am I now? Well, deep shame and embarrassment around my acquired deficits kept me quiet for years, until I made the decision just to push past my fears. At this point, I created my own internal lexicon in order to understand some of the abstract facts of living with a brain injury, especially one that was invisible. I stopped worrying about making others uncomfortable with my truths, and I began to integrate these terms I created into everyday conversations. In doing so, I reconnected with my voice. Not only has speaking my truth inspired learning journeys for those around me, it continues to be the most cathartic part of my entire recovery journey thus far. Voice was the key that opened the door to human connection for me again, and language offered me a way out of being unseen. Once expressing myself more freely again, I realized how detrimental the loss of control over my life had been. I needed to take back my power. I couldn't heal my brain or stop going to mandated appointments, but I could control my mindset. I began following high-performance coaches. I agreed to yoga therapy. I only consumed media that supported my growth. And I learned to set real boundaries, and so much more. Gratitude flowed to me after tiny wins, despite remaining in a sea of uncertainty. So, does all this mean that I found an escape page in the adventure book after all? No, my journey's still being written. What I do know is that I no longer feel the need to find one. Thank you.